If I told you that I had a dream to go swimming deep into a dark hole, hundreds of feet into the earth, with a powerful light to illuminate the cramped spaces until I reached the floor of this hole, nearly 1,000 feet below the surface, and there were dead bodies down there, waiting for me, would you say that I had a dream I was looking to fulfill? Or a nightmare? Welcome to Marooned, harrowing tales of the catastrophically lost. I'm Jack Luna. This is Aaron Habel.
Bushman's Hole is a very deep, submerged freshwater cave almost 900 feet deep, located near the Kalahari Desert in the Northern Cape Province in South Africa. It is the third deepest freshwater cave currently known and an extremely challenging dive. Divers need not only technical diving skills to complete this dive, but specialized equipment and gases as well as decompression schedules. To enter the cave, divers must first climb down the rocks before reaching the water below and then descend into a narrow tube-like tunnel that gets wider and opens up the deeper they descend. The main part of the cave is around 196 feet down. Those diving in the cave need to attach a rope to the ceiling of the main cave to guide them through the darkness. Without that rope and a powerful flashlight, one would find themselves disoriented with nothing but darkness in every direction. The flashlight not only allows them to see, but also alerts other divers of their presence.
Good God, Aaron. I'm just going to get this out of the way now. I'm not interested in diving into this, what's Bushman's Hole. Are you?
No, that's not, it's not for me. I'm not going to tell anyone else not to do it. I'm just not going with them. I'll watch the video.
I don't want to seem like a coward or anything.
I'm a coward. I'm not going in there. That's too much. It's juggling too much.
I think it'd be too much for pretty much anybody, man. This is a wild one. So Bushman's Hole, it's become infamous for those who've died trying to dive in there. In 1996, expert cave diver Nuno Gomes of New York City was awarded the Guinness World Record for the deepest cave dive in Bushman's Hole. Gomez plunged over 885 feet down to the depths of the cave in only 14 minutes, spending only 4 short minutes at the bottom. The time to ascend, with timed decompression stops along the way back up, took a whopping 12 plus hours to complete. The general rule is, the deeper the dive, the longer the ascent back to the surface. This is due to the need for more decompression time, more stops, more gas. Nuno Gomes made it out from Bushman's cave with his life, but the same could not be said for those after him.
Bushman's Hole had previously claimed the life of Eben Layden in 1993 after Layden fell unconscious, having descended 196 feet. The cave also took the life of Deon Dreyer, who was only 20 years old when he blacked out in Bushman's cave while doing an air dive. Despite his young age, he had 200 dives under his belt and could not resist the challenge of Bushman's Hole, where he tragically perished. He had always said that if he died, he would want to go out diving. He died at around 196 feet, his body sinking 885 feet to the bottom, where it would remain for a decade. How he died is not certain, but it is assumed he died from carbon monoxide buildup.
Well, now that I know that there's dead bodies in the hole, maybe I would give this a try. Can you imagine going into a hole where there's dead bodies floating around down at the bottom? That's just another element of terror with this. But for some, they can handle this type of thing. And not only that, they're kind of motivated to go back down again to try to help with those dead bodies, bring them up, and enter 50-year-old David Shaw. David Shaw was born July 20th, 1954 in Western Australia. He had flown as a pilot for various airlines, including Mission Aviation Fellowship in Papua New Guinea and Tanzania. At the time of this incident, he was flying... Tanzania? What did I say?
You said Tanzania.
I don't know. Why would I say that? Okay, He had flown as a pilot for various airlines, including Mission Aviation Fellowship in Papua New Guinea and Tanzania. At the time of this incident, he was flying for Cathay Pacific. He was a technical diver, father, and husband, and loved all things extreme. His wife, Anne, a deputy head teacher, knew there was always a risk that David may not return from one of his adventures, but she never tried to talk him out of it, as this was his passion in life. David had experienced some close calls in the past, but believed that he had God on his side, which would make anyone overconfident. These are the jokes, Aaron. These are the jokes.
The jokes. No, people really believe they have God on their side. It's just interesting because if you watch a boxing match, there was a recent boxing match. I
Yes,
wonder if both these guys, both Canelo and
Crawford.
Crawford, believe
Yeah,
God was on their side.
right.
I mean, God then is like, great, I got to pick one. And they both are thinking, I'm going to choose them.
Yeah. God had money
Yeah.
on Crawford, I guess. Better odds. But
Spoiler alert.
sorry, yeah. People actually watch boxing still. I try, but
That's the one I
or
wanted to watch, man. I missed it. And I should have watched it because I know they're both solid. Like, they're both great fighters.
oh, unbelievable. I mean, boxers are
Yeah.
super tough. Um, especially their heads. So so kidding. All right, so we're making fun here, but I mean, yeah, he did. He was very religious, and you get away with enough things in life, and you really do start to feel like, okay, I have faith. I think that something's looking out for me. You hear people say that a lot, and he felt this way. David, he began scuba diving quite late in life, in his early 40s, and first dived when he was in the Philippines with his teenage son in 1999. David enjoyed it a lot, but felt that it wasn't challenging enough for him. True to his nature, he began pursuing more technical dives. This is where David became interested in cave diving, and then that interest became his obsession.
Yeah, I respect that. But when I tell myself this and I say, "Oh yeah, this just isn't dangerous enough," you almost want to tap him on the shoulder and say, "Are you okay?"
Yeah, totally, totally.
But yeah, in order to dive deeper for extended periods of time, divers use rebreathers, a specialized diving apparatus that recycles the air. Now, David purchased his own rebreather, but felt he was limited by what the equipment had to offer. So he decided to customize it. He made some adjustments that would allow him to descend even deeper. Now, David had always been interested in exploring pockets of the world unseen by humans, and he believed cave diving offered the type of unexplored territory he was looking to dive. Bushman's Hole called Dave's name, and on October 28, 2004, he completed a record-breaking dive of 885 feet. He broke the records for depth on a rebreather, depth in a cave on a rebreather, depth at altitude on a rebreather, and depth running a line.
When David resurfaced from his first dive there, he said he had seen the body of Deon Dreyer. At this point, Dreyer's body had been down there for an entire decade. Dave reported that while at the depth where he saw the body, he struggled to breathe and was aware that he had to resurface. After seeing Dreyer's body down there, David Shaw found it difficult to shake the feeling that he had to do something about it. He was compelled to retrieve Deon Dreyer's body from the depths. Don Shirley, a British diver who ran a technical diving school in South Africa and would accompany David Shaw in his mission to retrieve that body, said, Dave felt very connected with Deon. He had found him, so it was like a personal thing that he should bring him back. Not only had the image of the 20-year-old alone down there played in his mind long after resurfacing, but David had even experienced a premonition of finding Deon's body in a dream only a couple of nights before he had found him. David, who was a father himself, paid a visit to Deon Dreyer's parents and told them of his plans to retrieve their son's body and return it to them. They were naturally ecstatic at the news that David, a man who had just completed a record-breaking dive and had seen their son's body down there, was motivated to help them. They had always wanted Deon's remains back with them so they could give him a proper funeral.
I got to tell you, I understand,
For
I
sure.
think it's a difficult, dangerous thing to take this on, but I'll tell you what, this brings up a little bit of an emotion in me because I know how important it is for people to get the remains of their loved one back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they were told by many people, you can't get your son back.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. And here they have this guy who really feels for him and says, look, you have hope now because I'm going back for Deon.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It is. Yeah, it's terrifying, I'll reiterate that, but it is beautiful. I mean, he's the only one, it seems, that's going to be able to do this too, by the way, Aaron.
Yeah.
So he's going to do it.
Yeah. It's like, David, you're our only hope.
Yeah, really. We're not going in there. Nobody's going in there. Just you, man. He's setting records of the thing, so.
Deon's body had been in the cave for so long that it was assumed his remains were skeletal. To prevent the bones from slipping out of his diving suit, David would carefully put the remains into a customized body bag that he would take down with him. David calculated that he would have a maximum of 5 minutes to put Deon's skeletal remains into that bag. In order to do so, he would need to cut the dive suit off Deon's body. He also decided that he wanted to salvage Deon's equipment, which was lodged on the cave floor. He planned to tie an additional rope to the equipment so he could drag it to the surface, an ambitious plan to perform at such a depth. David Shaw returned to South Africa within 2 months, where he made preparations to retrieve the body. Now, Luna, I think this is really interesting because it's enough to say, I'm going to get Deon back, and he's got to cut the suit off and then put his remains into this bag, but he also wants his equipment.
Yeah.
This is where I start to get really nervous because anything you're adding, it eats up more time.
Definitely.
And time is precious down there.
And you saying that makes me ask the question I wasn't really going to ask, but it's like, why not just take the whole suit with the body in it? Maybe there's, why do you think that? Why would he have to open it up and pull all the body parts out and put them in a bag? It feels like they might be in a bag already. It's kind of odd, right?
Well, they're talking about how it might slip out. Now, the only thing I can guess is there are openings in the suit. So if there are, maybe because he's skeletal, they're not just really wrapped around him like they used to be, the suit anyway. So he needs to make sure that all of his remains come back.
Gotcha. All right.
That's just a guess, though.
Yeah,
maybe one of our audience members can write in and tell me different.
Jeez. Okay. So in the days leading up to the dive, David Shaw had simulated getting Dreyer's body into a silk bag he and his wife, Anne, had designed. As a precaution, Shaw and the diving support team had 35 backup cylinders of gas waiting in the water in the event of rebreather failure. There was also a doctor on site in case of emergency, a skeptical doctor who was deeply concerned by the plan. No shit. I'd be like, you guys are going what? So the dive and retrieval would be recorded with a special camera that shot good footage in an earlier practice test. The camera, low-light Sony HC20 Handycam, was designed by documentary filmmaker Gordon Hiles. The night before the dive, almost as if by omen, a wire on Shaw rescue diver Don Shirley's newly purchased Hammerhead controller broke, rendering him unable to dive with Shaw. He was frustrated, but a determined Shaw decided to go it alone.
Well, during the night, Shirley managed to patch up the broken wire and continue the mission. January 8th, 2005, with the camera mounted to his helmet, David Shaw descended into Bushman's cave for what would tragically be the last dive of his life. He had a MK-15.5 Jorgensen Marine Hammerhead electronics for the dive. The MK-15.5 is a closed-circuit rebreather, also known as a CCR, which recycles gas as the wearer breathes, scrubbing out carbon dioxide and adding oxygen. Now, this allows the diver to stay underwater longer and eliminates the need to carry more gas. These electronics are computers with controls and sensors that monitor oxygen levels in the rebreather, and they manage the gases and keep them stable and safe to breathe. So that's step one. He's got to make sure he can breathe while he's down there. And before he submerged himself, David Shaw said to his diving support team, "The most important person on this dive is you. If you have a problem, deal with your problem and forget about me. It's better to have one person dead than two." Don Shirley added, "If Dave doesn't make it, if I don't make it, we stay there. That's the end of the story. We don't want to be recovered." Now, Shirley had served in the British military as an electronics specialist. He retired in South Africa, where he got into technical diving. He began working as a trainer and opened up a shop with a friend in Johannesburg. They had dived together a lot before this big dive.
So Shaw and Shirley, they agree with one another that Shirley should only attempt to retrieve Shaw if he's in trouble and signals up to him. That's to say, if he can't signal to him and he's in that much trouble, don't bother, because if Shirley were to go down at that point to retrieve him, seeing he's passed out, Shirley's obviously in danger of the same fate befalling him. With a camera mounted to his helmet to document the dive, David Shaw plunges into the water as Deon Dreyer's family wait patiently at the surface, hoping to receive their son's remains. Considering the lengthy ascent for adequate decompression, David Shaw estimated that he would be in the water for around 12 hours. It would take him approximately 12 minutes to dive to the bottom, with just 5 minutes to prepare Deon's remains. Deon's body was expected to break the surface around 1.5 hours into the dive. Aaron, that's because he's going to float it to the top?
Yeah, the idea is that he needs to decompress as he comes up.
Gotcha.
There needs to be that decompression schedule. But with Deon's body just being skeletonized, he doesn't have to worry about that.
Oh, yeah, right. I kind of missed that part. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so at 6:15 a.m., David Shaw drops into the water, plunging himself into darkness. At 6:15 a.m., David drops into the water, plunging himself into the darkness. The mission was supported by a team of 30 people, including various divers who would meet him along the way at various depth points of the dive, as well as police divers and paramedics at the surface.
Don Shirley waited at a depth of 721 feet, but when he looked below, he could see no sign of movement, just a still spotlight on the cave floor. It had been a full 20 minutes, and Shaw had still not attempted to ascend. Shirley knew that something was not right. Although they had discussed that Shirley would only assist Shaw if he signaled him to do so, Shirley began to descend to aid his friend, or, worst case scenario, clip Shaw's body to a line so it could be pulled back to the surface. As he descended, the hammerhead handset on his wrist cracked under the pressure when he reached 800 feet. Not wanting to suffer the same fate as Shaw, Shirley made the difficult decision to return to the surface alone.
He was off schedule, and the other divers who were scheduled to meet him on the way up at specific times knew they could not hang around for more than 2 minutes over the outlined timeline. They turned back once before leaving and noticed the dull hue of a light in the darkness below. One of the divers took out a slate and scrawled on it, "Did not meet D and D," that's Dave and Don, "at 150 meters for 6 minutes. One light below? Not sure. D's light off." And this message was taken back to the surface, and he showed it to other divers on the way up. He passed a fellow diver and friend of Shirley's in the chain, Peter Big B Herbst, on the way up. The message was held up for Peter, Big B, and he read it as divers swam past him at around 275 feet. Big B, who felt he couldn't leave his good friend to die alone if there was a chance he could help, went off schedule and descended past 400 feet to search for Don Shirley.
When he found Shirley, he checked he was okay before handing him the slate. Shirley wrote, "Dave not coming back." They both began their ascent and discouraged another support diver from diving down to search for Shaw, relaying that Shaw was dead. The messages soon reached the surface, devastating Dreyer's parents, who went back home sick to their stomachs thinking about how David Shaw's wife and kids would receive the news. David had told Anne that he was diving later in the day, so he would be able to call her himself to say he had completed the mission and was safe. She had no idea that he had perished. Shaw's family received a home visit from their church minister at their house in Hong Kong at around 7 p.m. His daughter Lisa, then 21 years of age, answered and knew that something awful had become of her father.
Don Shirley was alive, but he had gone deep in his attempt to help Shaw. As he reached 165 feet, he started to get lightheaded. Before passing out, he instinctively switched from his rebreather to his open circuit bailout and grasped around in the darkness, managing to grab the shot line by pure luck. He had floated up over 30 feet higher than he should have and slowly crawled back down the line to a depth of 114 feet to stave off the bends. Nauseated from spinning around in the water and changing depths, he began to throw up, spitting out his regulator each time. He scrawled down what was happening to him on his diving slate and handed it to a reserve diver who later came to check on him. And the diver checked Don Shirley's gases at this point, then returned to the surface to relay the update. Hey, he's sick down there. You imagine, Aaron, just throwing up while you're underwater and then having to throw your breathing device back in your mouth? Must be difficult. Scary.
He's a talented man. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Oh my God, man. What did he scrawl on the slate? I'm throwing up down here, and there's just throw up all around him. Oh, yeah, I know. That's messed up, dude. Good luck. So a rotation of divers stayed with him in intervals, and he was clipped to the shot line to keep him at the right depth and prevent him from passing out and floating off into the depths.
It took an agonizing 10 hours for Shirley to get to 20 feet. He had been constantly vomiting at any small movement, and his body temperature had dropped dramatically, making him almost hypothermic. It would take an additional grueling 2 hours and 20 minutes to reach the surface, and by this point, he was experiencing pain in his left leg. He was eventually taken from the water and put into a recompression chamber for 7 hours to shrink away a helium bubble that had developed in one of his ears. He would have a further 27 hours of sessions over the coming weeks and was left with balance issues and issues with his ability to think properly, which improved slightly over time.
Everybody left Bushman's hole after Don Shirley's resurface, bar Peter Big B Herbst, who had tasked himself with retrieving everything the team had left behind. The following Wednesday, police assisted in eventually pulling up the line where they found Deon Dreyer's body attached, as well as the body of David Shaw, with the camera still attached to his dive helmet. Although he had lost his life doing so, he had completed his mission of salvaging Deon's remains from the cave floor.
I'm getting emotional again, man, thinking about
crazy.
this. It's terrible that David Shaw left his family behind, but, this is the kind of noble deed. We hate it that had to go this way, but a noble deed to help another family. We're talking about a very selfless person. He didn't care, as much as he should have probably about himself because, well, maybe he was overconfident. Maybe he did have enough experience and he thought, I can do this. I already did it once. This is not going to be a problem. We don't know exactly at this point why he couldn't make it, but he completed his mission. And damn, you got to give the guy credit.
You absolutely do. And you're about to tell us some more of the detail as to how that went. He's an incredible man, I'll say that before we get further. David Shaw, obviously. He pushed himself beyond the limits to achieve his mission.
Gertnell, a police diver, asked if Herbst had seen the bodies of Shaw and Dreyer around 65 feet down while they were down retrieving gas canisters, to which they said they had not. Shaw's body was found floating at the ceiling of the cave. Deon Dreyer's headless body was suspended below, connected to a cave line that was wrapped around Shaw's flashlight. It appeared the pair had become tangled with one another and had floated up while the team attempted to retrieve the canisters and shot line. Dreyer's body was decomposed, but not skeletal, as assumed.
Yeah, like you said, his head had fallen off. This after the body had been disturbed, and one of Dreyer's feet, his corpse's feet, still with a diving flipper on it, fell off his body when brought to the surface. The rest of his remains, though, were put into a body bag. David Shaw's body was much like any decedent who dies in a body of water, swollen with gases, likely the reason he had floated to the roof of the cave. He still had the camera on his head, which was in working order, and contained footage that would go on to answer the questions surrounding his death and what happened to him in Bushman's Hole. When the team reviewed the footage, they watched David Shaw's last moments alive. There will be a link in the show notes for this too if you were brave enough to check it out yourself.
Yeah, the video showed David Shaw on the cave floor, his hands pale white in front of him, pulling out the body bag. Although it was assumed that after 10 years Deon's body would have been skeletal, the body instead seemed to be in a more preserved state, almost a state of mummification. Buoyant. Deon's body unexpectedly floated up before David, making the task of getting it into the body bag much more difficult. David became tangled in the line, the rope wrapped around his torch, making the job almost impossible. He attempts to cut himself free of Dreyer's body with his scissors, but missed the rope multiple times, struggling and slipping backwards on the sloped cave floor. It is believed he was in a state of confusion at this point, hyperventilating as he took fast and shallow breaths. His walking along the floor was compared to jogging.
So you could hear his breathing really going, and you could see his hands shaking. When it was time for David to leave, he knew it was time. He had to attempt to swim up, but he got tangled in the ropes and was unable to free himself. We're talking about minutes here. You need, like we said earlier, those divers waiting on them, they had a 2-minute window. This thing had to happen fast. And him having any hang up here, literal, spelt doom. The increased breathing by David caused significantly more CO2 to build up in his system, eventually depriving him of oxygen and causing him to drift off. his light hanging still as he floated, unconscious. The final scene in the video showed David's hands motionless in front of him. The line he failed to sever is laced between his fingers. Despite meticulous planning, David Shaw died alone in what was a mission with high risks. While he didn't die alone, he did have the body of Deon Dreyer there that he was attempting to retrieve, and he managed to clip onto it before he passed. So we have that.
Yeah, it's just a nearly impossible mission because he can't control everything down there. He knows what his mission is. He knows what he needs to do.
Yeah.
But as you explained there, his person that he's supposed to retrieve, that of Deon Dreyer, the body of Deon Dreyer,
Mm-hmm.
it's moving around, and it's moving around a lot more than he expected.
Yeah.
And so down there, it's really difficult to do simple tasks that we just take for granted. I mean,
Yep.
if you were holding looking to hold a string in front of you and cut it with scissors where you're at, then that would be easy, but not in Bushman's hole.
No, and it's really, there's a lot that's really scary about this, Aaron, but the breathing, his breathing picking up, he's panicking because he knows he's only got so much time. Also, the way I initially took it was, it's scary down there, but this guy is used to this type of thing. He's used to it. Any one of us down there with a dead body trying to do something with it in the dark with a lamp on our head would start hyperventilating because we're in terror. He's hyperventilating because he knows that he's only got so much time, and I'm screwing this up a little bit. I'm not my body's not working for me correctly because of the conditions down here. Man, he starts to breathe too fast and eventually just passes out. It's horrible.
Yeah, and I think that's the key here. I think if he had managed to keep himself together, I think he would have made it and completed his mission. But
Yeah.
it's to bring up boxing again. Mike Tyson back in the day would say everyone has a plan until they get hit.
Yes.
And unfortunately, David Shaw got hit,
Yeah.
and he just didn't respond well. And it's no shame, but it cost him everything.
It did. And on a real quick light note on Mike Tyson, he is one of my favorite quotes: "A friend to everyone, an enemy to yourself."
A little over a week later, Deon Dreyer's parents viewed his headless body at a local morgue. They felt a sense of happiness that his body was almost intact and that they were able to see him. David Shaw's wife, according to news sources, could not say the same about her husband's body being recovered. Part of her had hoped his remains would stay deep in the cave he was so determined to defeat. David Shaw's ashes were scattered in South Africa as per his wife's request. I want to say real quick that, I feel like he did beat the cave. It's just he went back. And, sometimes people will do something amazing, like they'll defeat Bushman's hole. Right.
Mm-hmm.
The trouble I have is sometimes they'll say, oh, I did that.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do stuff because of our skill and because of luck.
Yeah.
And, provided that everything goes okay, maybe you can defeat that cave. But the cave is renowned for how dangerous it is because experienced divers have died down there.
Mm-hmm.
Being experienced, knowing what to do, that's not the entire battle. It's how we cope when things go wrong. And any one of us can fail under those circumstances.
Absolutely. And I'm sure his family, his wife, his kids, everybody, very proud of him. He had a mission, and he was really dedicated to get the body back for the parents of Deon Dreyer. And in the end, he actually did complete that mission. It may seem ridiculous to many, or silly to even some, but I doubt it did to David Shaw. This was very serious for him. And I wonder if you could talk to David Shaw today, if he would say, I regret going into that cave, or that's what I set out to do, and somehow I managed to achieve it. These people who do these type of things are just built different. We've said it many times before. So I'm inclined to think the latter that he would say.
Now they want a challenge. That's what they need in life. They want a family. They also want a challenge. Whenever I'm covering a case for Generation Y, I try to find a silver lining because we can't go back and change what happened. There's a loss of life. There's a terrible crime, what have you. In this case, we can't go back and urge David to do this differently.
Right.
Maybe just
Mhm.
try to take the body up. Forget trying to get it into a bag or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Just bring it up. We can't do that. So again, our silver lining is that he was selfless and he really
Yeah.
wanted to help another family out. So maybe people can try to find ways that aren't so dangerous to do things to help people. But hey, this guy was qualified to go into that cave. He'd done it once. He tried it again. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. You and we're staying away from Bushman's Hole.
Well, I have bad news here. We're in a boat here. We're not at Bushman's Hole, but we're just out in the water. We're going to do some diving, and I don't want to do it now, Aaron, because the scary story scared me quite a bit. But I dropped the keys over the side of the boat. Can you go get them? Can you go get them, and I'll
I don't want to
watch
go in
out?
the water either now. And now we don't have enough to drink. This is the problem. You drank too much. This is what I get for driving the boat. And why did you even have the keys?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I thought I could be trusted, but clearly I can't be. I'll put a headlamp on. You go to the bottom. I'll watch your back. If you have a problem, give me the thumbs up.
I can hear it now. Luna's like, I see a light down there, but it's not moving anymore. I think we have to cut loose and leave. Sorry, Aaron.
Yeah, I actually have the keys, and I just drive the boat away because I wanted to drink the rest of the beer by myself.
I'll be like, you selfish bastard.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, good night, Aaron.
Good night, Jack.